City Matters.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Rich Acritelli, and on today's episode of The Fog of War and Humanity here on HMTV, my special guest is Lieutenant Colonel Marty Vieira. Will join me for an interesting conversation about his decades of service at the 106th Air National Guard base in West Hampton Beach, New York, as a combat rescue officer and a very, very positive figure. Marty, we were just speaking before about some of your training that brought you to several different bases, some ups and downs. It's just at 32 years old, you're doing all this training, a lot of physicalities. Was there any of those things that at your age was difficult for you, as you're probably 10 or 12 years older than some of the other recruits there?
The daily grind, and again, they made every day a little bit tougher. But I think because I was exercising, I was doing triathlons and half marathons and things like that before I came in. It was actually, we did pretty good. The physical part was okay.
And you were probably in better shape than some of the youngsters that was there, right? And,
absolutely.
And you're a little bit older, so you kind of have other experiences that you could fall back on to get you through some of those tough times, right?
Yep, definitely.
Okay. So now you do your survival training, you do your training where you put everything together, everything that you're taught. Now what happens after that point?
Well, after graduation, I came back to the unit, and we had a year of training, like mandatory.
And you were married, right, at this point?
Nope. It was a year after.
Okay, so what year do you graduate?
2005.
2005. What was the feeling in terms of your moment? They give you, right, the maroon cap, right, the beret.
Yep.
What were your feelings?
I'll never forget when they say, don your beret, blouse your boots. And every time I go back to a graduation, it's so satisfying. I had my aunts and my mom, my future wife there. It was a great moment.
And your dad was, I'm sure, looking down, right, saying, my boy did it. And, he showed that discipline and hard work and just never letting up, right? You just never let up. That sort of thing, right?
Never quit.
Now, 2005, we're kind of in the middle of the fighting in Iraq and then Afghanistan, right? Where do you go in 2005?
So I'm back home and working at the unit, and basically getting my upgrade from a 3-level to a 5-level, so I could be mission qualified, and that's what I was just doing. So just training every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're a lieutenant colonel. You're in the higher echelon of officers now. When do you go to school to become an officer?
Yeah, I stayed as a PJ for about 2 years, and I had a decision to make. And again, so then I was 36, and it's a young man's game. And my wife wasn't moving to Jersey, but I applied for a few PJ positions, didn't get them, and then I got the combat rescue officer position.
Okay. Now, where did that take you?
Well, since it's a guard unit, I'm staying in the same place, and I'm just now I'm in charge of some of the people that I've been working, or they've been growing me. So.
Okay. Now, did they send you anywhere, or where was the training to become an officer?
It was McGee Tyson Academy of Military Science.
Where was that?
McGee Tyson is in. I don't know at this time.
Okay. Now you become an officer.
Yep.
Was it in some ways a little bit easier, or just completely different than what you experienced through the school to become a PJ?
It was a little easier. The physical part was, pretty easy as far as that goes. But there was, no phones. You're away again from your family, and no, it was good. It was a rewarding experience.
Okay, good. Now, you graduate from there, right? Another success, right?
Yeah.
Now, do you go back to West Hampton Beach?
Back to West Hampton Beach.
And you go back to West Hampton Beach as a second lieutenant.
Second lieutenant. Yep.
Okay, so now what are your responsibilities?
They put me on the team, so basically I was just getting my team commander upgrade, which goes through a lot of the basics. But now you're a completely different role, right? So now you're protecting the team, protecting the men, making critical decisions with your chief or your team leader. But that got me ready to go on a few of my deployments.
All right. So now, what was your first deployment?
First deployment was Iraq, and then it was Afghanistan, and then Africa.
Okay, so you go to Iraq.
Yep.
What year was that?
That was 2008.
Do you recall where you were, or were you in just different spots in Iraq?
I was mostly at Balad.
What part of the country is that?
That's center, southeast.
Okay, was it southeast of Baghdad or in the southern part of the country?
Southern part.
Southern part of the country. Okay. Did you like serving in Iraq? Was there anything?
It was my first deployment, so very eye opening, but very rewarding. We got some good missions. I got my feet under me as far as being an officer, being a crow. I got to big learning curve there.
And it was very busy, right? Very
busy.
A lot of fighting, a lot of fighting. Resources coming in and going out, right? Yeah. Now you go from Iraq. Now you have a little more experience, right? Now you end up going to Afghanistan after that.
Yep.
Do you come home or?
No, absolutely. Yeah, we came. Yeah, there was time in between each deployment.
Okay, so what year in Afghanistan?
That was 2012.
Okay, so now this is what, 7 years after you graduate from PJ training.
Yeah.
A couple years after that, you become an officer. Yeah. What's your rank in 2012?
I was captain.
You're captain now. Yeah. So now you a little more experience, right? A little more knowledge, right, in terms of military. Yeah. What was your job in Afghanistan?
Same thing, team commander. And I was still, because of the officers that we had at the unit, I was still the lower man. So I was still with the team executing.
What were you guys executing? What was your part of your mission over there?
Well, mostly, combat search and rescue. In Afghanistan, I remember a few times we had two missions where we had a Humvee IED and guys were stuck, so we had to go get on the ground and get the guy out and get him off the battlefield. So
now, what's the difference? The PJ is going in. The combat rescue officer is kind of giving them the ride there. Is that a good way of putting it?
Well, it depends on a few things, but on most of those missions where we're gonna be on the ground for a long time or extended period of time, I'm gonna be on the ground. The PJs are heads down. They're pulling out the mission, and I'm coordinating where the team is. I'll coordinate with the ground force commander.
Do you fly, or are you just part of the crew inside the helicopter or C-130? What's your main role there?
Well, we're all part of the crew, but
okay.
I'm the guy that we're going to get out in most cases.
Okay, so you're going to be on the ground.
Be on the ground, okay. Yeah, with the team.
Okay, so now what's your big thing? You're approaching the site. You hit the ground. I know there's different situations, but can you walk through me one of them?
Sure. Getting on the ground, the first thing you do is have to find out the person that called us, like the ground force commander that's there. So find out where their men are, how we're gonna, if there's a threat, I have the helicopters above me. So if we need to do a call for fire, who's gonna do it? Where are his men? And basically let the PJs, execute the mission, whatever it may be.
Okay.
And then I'm giving my team leader timelines, and I'm coordinating with the aircraft, like, hey, this is how we're gonna get picked up. This is when we're gonna get picked up. Things like that. Or if I need to see if any enemy are coming, I get that information and I can relay it to my team.
Okay, 2012. Is Afghanistan busy at that point?
Yeah, it was busy.
Okay, what was the differences between Iraq and Afghanistan? Were there any differences, or was it night and day?
The missions were pretty much the same, but Iraq was, if you have to describe it, just the sand and the air quality. Africa was beautiful.
Okay.
Living conditions were fine, pretty much the same. We're at a base, and then we would move from that main hub and pre-position to get closer to the fight or where the people that were on alert for. But
okay. In Afghanistan, it had a little bit more mountains in Afghanistan where you were?
Yeah, a little more mountains.
Okay. Where in Africa were you located?
I was in Djibouti, the Horn of Africa. Again,
And that's on the East Coast, right, near the Red Sea and the
Yep.
Indian Ocean and Arabian Gulf, right? Am I pretty close to that? There?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. Somalia.
What kind of area is that? I know it's a small area, but
They when I was there, they had started with a lot of reconstruction. They were building up a big shipping harbor.
okay.
So we weren't really allowed to go off base that often. There was a firing range that we were allowed to travel to on training days, things like that. So I didn't get to see that much of the country really.
And what is it? The government, it leases right to land there for the military base. This tiny, little speck on the map, tiny place. And
tiny place, but it's a big base. It's grown a lot over the last years.
And it's a very strategic location, right? It's a major crossroads.
It's got it's got things north and south.
Okay. Were you there many times? Did you go back and forth there? Is that somewhere where you guys will end up going to?
Yeah. There's potential to rotate in there.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still there.
All right. So now, this is Lieutenant Colonel, okay, Marty Viera's. Okay. I don't know if you could see it. Okay. These are all the different schools. Okay, since he goes in as an airman at, in Texas at the Air Force Base, right?
Yeah.
At Lackland, right?
Yeah.
Now, he goes to all these places, all the training, all the sacrificing, doing different things, being given one thing to do, he succeeds at it. And if you look at this list, there was always something else that he was doing as well. What were some of the things that you learn from all this training? You see a younger officer, a younger Marty Vieira coming up through the ranks. What do you tell them?
So with being in a guard unit, we have two bosses. We're our governor is basically our boss stateside, and then president and is for Title 10 and for active duty, so the combat kind of side of the house. So at home, it's mostly training, and then you get calls for different civilian missions. Sandy, even if you remember the Winter Storm Nemo,
okay.
we were out, saving lives on that locally, and things like that. So
that's got to be rewarding, right?
Absolutely.
You're not a half a world away. You're, near where you grew up, right? Where you worked as a kid.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Now, you go out into the Atlantic Ocean. What's the furthest mission? And can you describe some of that mission?
Sure.
That you did.
Okay. In 2017, we got a call, probably around 8 o'clock in the morning, about a container ship that had an explosion and 4 seamen had severe burns. So with coordination with Boston RCC and our flight dock, they were like, they have to get someone there to secure their airways as soon as possible. And my flight doc actually told the director, this team is the only team that can do that.
Now you fly 1,500 miles.
Yep.
Geographically, where is that? And here's the picture right here. Here's the map. Okay.
It's directly in the center of the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay.
So there were ships 2 days away. There was nobody around.
Now you go out there.
Yep.
How do you handle that operation?
So we had a plan, and we had 4.5 hours on the plane, and it was used up with getting prepared and deciding what we're going to do. So we decided that we're going to drop a Zodiac boat, which is deflated.
Now, did you guys have to refuel when you're going that far, or?
No, the C-130 has pretty good legs.
Okay.
They did run out. They were like on almost bingo fuel, and they had to leave us a little bit earlier than they wanted to because of that, and they knew that they had a strong headwind going back.
Okay.
But no, they didn't have to refuel on that one.
Okay. And what kind of vessel were you going after?
It was a cargo ship, 625 feet. It was called the motor vessel Tamar.
Okay, and it was this one right here.
Yep, that's the one.
You guys can see.
That's the one. So we got on scene, and the ceilings were very low, so we had to decide on which.
So now
parachute.
you jump.
Yep.
You have the Zodiac, the raft, right?
Yep.
How far away from the ship are you?
We probably about 1,000 meters.
Wow.
But the big thing was it was at night. It was 1,400 feet, which is below our minimum that we normally jump at, with a razzle, which is a static line square parachute. But and there was no recovery. They didn't have a recovery ship, so if you didn't get close to the package, basically close to the boat, you either had a long swim or you had to wait for your teammates to get the boat up and running and then find them in this sea of darkness. And
now, what's the communication in all this? Is it coming from the C-130? Is it coming from you guys? You have any radios or anything like that on you?
Yeah, we jumped with radios, and we had the package, the boat, and ourselves lit up like Christmas trees. We had chem lights all over the place. It was 12-foot seas, so it was tough to keep your eye on the personnel and your teammates. But we jumped out with the first stick was four of us, and then once we got to the package, we relayed up to the C-130 and said, all right, send the second team, and they jumped shortly after. And then after that, we got the boats. So the boats are deflated for size in the C-130, but there's a scuba tank. So you basically unravel this thing, you dewater the engine, you get it started, and then it was time to get our equipment. So the C-130 made 3 passes and dropped these huge equipment bundles with all of the medications and things that we needed to help the patients out.
And they dropped them relatively close to you guys in the water?
Yeah, so again, they were low on fuel, and we had not gotten the second boat up and running, but we just made the call, just drop it anywhere between us and the ship.
Okay.
And they landed it very close.
A lot of teamwork, right?
A lot of teamwork.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of ship? Was it a container ship? Was it run by where was this ship out of?
It was a Slovenian ship, and they were going to Gibraltar.
Wow.
Yep.
And they were coming from the United States or from the Western Hemisphere?
They were coming from the United States.
Okay.
South, yeah.
And what were some of the problems that you saw on the ship there?
So there was 4 injured. When we landed in the water, they were like, hey, can you get here soon? I had to make a decision that I had to wait for the team, and I had to stick to the plan. But we had 2 patients alive. The other 2 were deceased.
And these are some of the pictures right here, right? In
Yep.
terms of
Yep.
okay, the conditions they were in and
Yep.
and so on. So they were in a difficult spot. If
Yeah.
you guys don't
spot.
show up from 1,500 miles away, I mean,
they would not have survived.
and that shows the capabilities of the U.S. Air Force, the PJs, West Hampton Beach, right? To coordinate all these things,
Right.
not only at home, but in the middle of a very large ocean too.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Now, after this mission, do you go home, or where do you end up going, and how do you get there?
Okay. So we had to stay on the ship and treat the patients for 36 hours. And some of the medical things and procedures that we did were when we dropped the patients off finally in Lisbon, they were like, this is the most amazing work they've ever seen, even from like a local standpoint. So we had ventilators we had to do an escharotomy. We had to take their airway in one case because it was just too swollen, so we couldn't put an ET tube in. But we stayed with them for 36 hours until we got into helicopter range from a helicopter unit that was in the Azores. They came in and hoisted 3.
That's an American base there in the Azores, or a NATO base. Or?
It was American base, but it was a Portuguese unit.
Okay.
So they came in and they had 18 minutes to get us out because of their fuel issues. But they basically hoisted us off the ship and they flew us to Azores, where we met a team full of doctors, a fixed wing, and we transferred the patients over to them. And then they were flown to Lisbon, where they spent 2 months in a burn unit.
Now, how long did you stay in the Azores for?
I stayed in the Azores for another 2 days. So I was waiting for my team that was still on the boat to meet us.
Okay. What year was that?
2017.
2017, so about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, have you had many missions like that, or was that a...
That was the mission of my career, and pretty much, most recently of the base.
Now, you look back at a situation like that, very serious medical.
Yeah.
Now, were the instructors correct when they trained you on how to handle all these different situations where it was hard? It was some harsh training environment, but was this what they were training you for?
Absolutely, yeah. The trauma is our bread and butter, and we definitely spent a lot of time concentrating on that. And our flight doc, Dr. Rush, he basically made us the premier medical unit, PJ unit in the Guard at least.
Now, do you always have to have like refresher courses when it deals with these medical situations? The training never stops, right? It's always there, right?
Yeah, it never stops. We do all types of training. We have a very robust annual training plan, and medical is a huge part of it.
Okay. Now, you're in the Atlantic Ocean. You're a long ways from home. Are there points where you look back and say, how did I get through that?
Well, I remember vividly when I was on the ramp. It's dark. The only thing you can see is some of the lights from the ship, and I said a little prayer, and it was basically, God, just let me help these people. Like, just not today. Don't let anything happen to me, because I really want to help out.
That's a big thing. That's part of your mission too, right?
Yeah.
So, now you look at this here. Now you're a teacher for a long time. Now you're, towards the later half, of now your military career. What's your job now?
Well, I just got selected as the commander of the 103rd Rescue Squadron, so I plan to do that for the next 4 to 5 years.
And what are some of your responsibilities?
I'm in charge of the entire squadron, so budget, training, equipping, so a little weight on my shoulders. But,
all right.
But
exciting time, though, right?
I'm ready for it, yep.
Yeah, that's good. And you have a wealth of experience and knowledge and, moments big and small, right, that go into that. Well, Marty, thank you very much for coming down here to HMTV.
Thanks again.
You're probably looking at one of the most positive people here. That is, God forbid you're in an accident or something's going on, you're in very good hands. And, his officers and his younger enlisted figures are they're in good hands in terms of when they look up towards, when they're leading officers. We appreciate you coming down here, and thank you very much for your service.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Marty.
All right.